Welcome to episode 281, 11/16/25. Great news, question mark, 50-year mortgages, question mark. All right, that's it. Before we get into our content, let's look at our playlist where you may find our status chats, this episode and others. Although you might be finding today's episode on LinkedIn or Insta or over on X, one of the other places that we may put it, Facebook, but you can always, in each video, you should see that status chat QR code. Go find them over on the YouTube hosting page. All right, don't want to take up too much time. This may run about 15 minutes episode, so what I want to just remind you of, great SEC football. I'm kind of hoping, although I'm not a Vandy fan, kind of hoping to see Vanderbilt make it up a few spots till they hit 12, get a playoff bracket. Now, they're not currently in it in the second week, but I think it is certainly possible. Two teams above them may fall out of their spots, which may make room for Vandy to move up. We may have some unexpected losses above us, which may shift some things around. Still got 3 weeks left to go. All right, we want to talk about this 50-year mortgage thing. Now, I can't really give you detailed analysis, make you any kind of promises or whatever, because I'm not a mortgage loan officer or originator. Can't help you there, but I do know people, and I can help you with them and let them run any numbers you might want to look at. But I selected this article here from Fortune, as you can see. It was produced yesterday on the 12th. Today's the 13th. And this man's name, Nick Lichtenberg. I hope I didn't butcher his name. Sounds maybe Swiss or German. I'm not real good with such people's names that aren't my own. Sometime I would even forget my own birthday some years. So I hope I didn't butcher his name, but the clickbaity title to grab this is Trump's 50-year mortgage would save you about $119 in the long run, UBS estimates. Now, my gut feel as soon as I heard this is, I don't care who came up with it. I'm not a big fan of 50-year mortgages. In fact, the only way I would take a 30-year mortgage is because I could not pay a 20-year mortgage, or I could not carry a 15 mortgage, or I didn't have enough cash to chunk down to get my mortgage payment down. So most people, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb to say this, most people will base how much house they can buy by how much money they can get and where that loan tops out on its monthly payment. But the things you got to keep in mind when you look at this stuff so much is it's not magic. It's not a super gimme. Okay, when you go to a longer loan, first thing that you need to put in your calculator is how confident are you on your 50-year rate versus your 30-year rate? Okay, because you're tying somebody else's money up for a lot longer. And we're even staying in our homes longer. We're staying in our homes as of earlier this week when I looked it up. It was about 11, 12 years, depending on who you ask. Well, you have a lot of other things. Maybe you're not going to be in a house 50 years. And so maybe you're not worried about, paying it off and the whole lifetime's worth of interest that you're going to pay on it. Maybe you're just worried about, I just need to get off the rent and onto the housing ladder. And the only way you can do that perhaps is go with a 50-year loan, if they actually make them. But we don't know how much rate they're going to be, and we're just spitballing. We got no clue, if you really want to be honest. This may not even happen. But you have other things that you might be considering. First of all, if the house was perfectly ideal and you were just in love with it and you couldn't ever imagine being anything better, is your housing need going to change likely over the period of that mortgage? Is it? I mean, or maybe you have a child and you didn't have room for a child before. Now you're going to have a child, or you have an extra child, or maybe one goes off to college and you don't need the extra room and you don't need another office in the house and you want something smaller, or maybe you like a big yard when you bought the house, but now you're getting like me, your old knees ain't much punking, and mowing the grass is getting to be a pain, or maybe you decide you don't like your home organization out there, your HOA. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you have a job. The average jobs, according to Google, was 3.9 years. Average marriage is about 7 or 8 years, depending on who you ask. And if you depend on two incomes for it, and that wedded bliss or whatever arrangement you may have, if you're depending on those two incomes, this could be a big thing for you, taking on those extra 2 decades, extending your loan 40% from a 30-year loan. Well, let's look back at this and let's see what they say when we scroll down. Here, a proposal floated by the Trump administration. It's not even inked yet. Floated by the Trump administration. I think it's through the FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Administration, to create a new 50-year mortgage product to improve home affordability. See, I take offense to that right. It's not housing affordability. Just because you can carry a payment didn't make it any more affordable. It's still the price of the house is the price of the house, and your income is your income. We got into a bit of trouble during the Biden years when we hit inflation and we lost our previous low rates on our mortgages. So we lost our good mortgage rates and we lost our good prices, and we shot up in value after COVID. And our incomes didn't keep pace. That's the fundamental underneath it that underpins this. Our incomes did not increase at the same speed or relative speed as the pricing of houses. So stretching our payments out don't actually make them any more affordable. Not in my mind. You might be able to tote the note a little bit better. You may even be able to qualify for it, but I don't really feel like I don't think that's a good use of the term affordability. But they are saying go into a 50-year mortgage product to improve housing affordability could offer significant immediate savings to homebuyers, but at the steep cost of doubling their interest burden over the life of their loan, says so Mr. John of UBS. All right. And maybe you don't plan on holding a loan for 50 years. I think when we get down to this section down here, how the math breaks down, we're going to look at the first question that I have is going to be, are we estimating enough volatility between the locking in of a 30-year loan and the locking in of a 50-year loan? Because remember, they came up with on a pretty standard median house of $420,000. That's not an extravagant house in our area. And it assumes 12% down. Well, 12% down on a $420,000 house, they say, is $50,400. How many people could cash a check today for $50,000? Could put 12% down, could put that down. But you know, the more you put down, normally the better your interest rate would be. But what if you are one of these people who still wanted that $420,000 house and did not have $12,000 down, and you did find a product that would let you do 0 down? Then that means you have no skin in your game when you buy that house. And now if you stretch it out to 50 years, how long is it going to take you by the numbers to not potentially be underwater or at risk of being underwater if we were to see a little bit of a blip on our markets? See, part of the beauty, if you can do it, of putting 20% down or 10% down or even 12% down, is you at least have, normally speaking, what you put down, a bit of a cushion before you get underwater. Now, if you were to default, you would lose what you put down on it. But you don't want to do that. But still, sometimes things happen. Sometimes unions between people are no longer happy and they go away and you lose that second income. Could you carry the house by yourself? Could either one of you carry the house by yourself? Maybe you can't without adjusting your car, your ride, your health club membership, or your standard of living. But do you have an ability perhaps to increase your odds of being able to stay in the house that you have? And that could be combining that with your potential in income growth that you imagine you're going to have over the life of that loan. So if the average job, according to my Google, said it was 3.9 years, that's not too long. If a divorce is potentially 8 years or so, and you may have to then move out then the 50 year may not matter anymore. It may not be that big of a deal, in which case it may make more sense to you. It may be something that works out good in your case. But I can come up with just as many doomsday scenarios as I can to make it sound rosy and sell it to you. You have to be pretty confident in what you're doing. Now, as long as our markets keep going up and up and up, maybe buy in. And maybe rates go absolutely bonkers. And you'll be like, oh gosh, I'm so glad I had that 6.33% loan when I bought this 50-year mortgage. But let's see what their assumptions are down here, because this is another I don't know moment. However, the 50-year loan product is estimated to carry 50 basis points. That's only 0.5%. That's only 0.5%. So let's go see if we've seen any kind of volatility just in 30-year loans being 50 basis points. Well, back here in January, where were we? We're at 7.62. Where are we today, even though we've kind of come back up? Is it 6.29? That, to me, if I'm any judge of digits, is more than 50 basis points. That's just volatility in, the year, just this year alone. So when we look at what they're coming up with here in their assumption to say that at this little bit of interest difference, 50 basis points, only got you $119. Let me go up here and find it. $119 worth of saving with 50 basis points, but it doubles your total. If you don't get to refinance, you're doubling your interest payments to go, 2 more decades. That's not 60 years, that's 50 years, and you'll pay twice as much because the way it's all front-end loaded and slowly tapers down as your loan, you start to get bigger and bigger percentages of principal versus interest, but on the front end, you're just there. Now, what if you don't have that 12% to chunk down and you're stuck with, say, a 0% down or some small percent, 3%? When you buy your house and you get it set up because you're just trying to get off of the rent onto a housing ladder, some type of house, okay? Assume that you do that. Well, the less skin in the game that you have, the more likely that a blip in our markets, in values, maybe something happens and we slow down a lot and prices begin to fall a bit. Well, if you only have 1%, 2%, or 5% there and you haven't been paying for 5 years, you might find out that you get caught underwater, just like you would if you bought, a $70,000 or $100,000 truck, drive it off the lot, and somebody hits you from behind. Interest is going to give you the insurance is probably going to cover what it's worth, not what you just paid for it, and you find yourself in that big gap. Well, we sort of cover a lot of our gaps in real estate historically, although not always, by adding value by inflation, by increased cost of building and its replacement for an existing house as a new house as a replacement. They are somewhat competing products for the same market, new versus old, but the new prices help pull up the old prices, and the older houses previously loved, if they were significantly lower than new construction would have to lower their price of their house, because you could just say, well, maybe we won't get a brand new house. Maybe we just get one that's maybe 5 or 10 years old if we can save, a huge percentage of money. So these markets play off each other, and we don't know what the future holds. But 50 years is an awful long time for me. That would make me a little bit uncomfortable, although I could maybe see a condition where I might need to do that. If I thought I were going to improve my income, maybe I'm in physician assistant school and I anticipate graduating in the next few years. Well, in that case, maybe this just gets me started. This is absolutely an individual person's opinion of what is good for their case. And you just need to be careful that you don't get too excited about hearing how 50-year mortgages might happen, because, maybe it's just not for you. Maybe it is for you. Maybe it's the start you need. But make sure you understand the numbers. And if you need a finance guy, I've got people that I can hook you up with a couple of different choices, and you can get a guy to run the numbers for you. Just a lot of unknown in this whole concept of a 50-year mortgage. It feels awfully long if we're only staying in our house, say 12 years. 5 times that length of time. Maybe it'll roll off and we could get out from under it. We don't know, but you're just not going to build much equity very quickly based upon your payment schedule, maybe based upon inflation and the cost of its substitutes and replacements, newer houses. So yeah, that may be good for you. So before we go into our numbers, let's just remind you to smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so that when our chats here go live, that you'll know it's been published. All right, now let's look at our numbers from this week that is coming up. Last week, this is what we had. 11 of 0625, we had 29,463 in the availables. That's what's out there to buy. And of 4140 were the under contracts, but still showing these bad boys. Both of those numbers dipped over the previous week, but the integer ratio remained exactly the same as it had for several other weeks before that. This week, 11, 12 of 25, we've reversed the directions, but not enough to change that 14 under contract ratio. It's 29,636. That's less than 200 on the availables and only 14 on the under contracts at 4,154. But technically, both of them did increase. The ratio didn't. So we're not seeing a great deal of volatility, at least not in our MSA. So you know what we got to do now? We got to hit our wisdom that hopefully I've selected for you. This is from one of my favorite economists, living economists, is Thomas Sowell, and he talks about this. And the way I looped this in, what made me think of this quote was, it's politicians who are thinking about this 50-year loan, making a 50-year mortgage, right? And it could potentially add some risk into our system if they continue to decrease the credit required to get one of these loans. So when you go a long time out and lower on the credit ratings, or however they're going to figure it, that to me is building risk in the system, which brings me to Thomas Sowell's statement.